Yeah, so working with Netflix, let's just start there. Yeah, tell me about it.
We'll talk about it in we gotta like build into that because there's like reasons how we got there.
Yeah, I say we go ahead and start because we got a lot to catch up on.
Dude, this is us catching up. If you really think about it, this is us catching up.
Yeah, when's the last time we hung out? Months? Year? A year?
Year. Okay, so we haven't seen each other in over a year.
So yeah, we haven't seen, yes, we haven't seen each other in over a year. And the last time we did a podcast was
officially that we got
4 years, 5 years, because we were talking about it a little bit before we started recording here.
Well, I know I wasn't working for the crew yet.
No, because that was a part of the conversation that we had was what you were doing at that time, things you were kind of eyeballing that you wanted to do.
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, I feel like in that episode you shared that you were like, yeah, I'd kind of like to maybe work with like somebody like the crew or something like I swear you shared something like that.
I probably did. Dude, I should have listened to it just to
you should have like rehabbed like, all right, what stories did I tell?
You're right. 2020.
Episode 10.
May 4, 2020. And we probably recorded it, I think, in December because before the pandemic.
Yes, yeah, we recorded that like because I did all those episodes before I launched anything.
It's been a minute.
So, yeah, since we've done, I mean, yes, we did the 15-minute episodes, those sort of count, but those were like topic-based and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
We have not done a deep dive podcast since
It's going to be fun.
Early 2020, if not late 2019 when I was recording all those
late 2019
episodes.
Because it was like the winter time beforehand. And I remember being able to freely go around and do all the things. Yeah, dude, this is why.
Yeah. Well, it's time to catch up. One, for us in general, but two, in the podcast universe here, we technically haven't sat down since 2019 or 2020. And I feel like probably a little bit of life has happened.
Are we starting right now?
Is you starting?
We're in it. Oh.
We're in it. We're going.
I'm sitting here thinking like this feels like an intro, but I'm not sure. I thought we were for real trying to catch us up. All right, I'm here. Hello.
No, we're in it. We're in it. So here's an official. Hey Tyler, welcome back to the show.
It's good to be back, my friend. How are you?
I am wonderful, and I'm very, very stoked that we are making this happen after 4 or 5 years at this point.
Yeah.
And you are the second ever actual full-on return guest that I've had here on the show.
Who's the other person?
Josh Emmerich.
You know what? Esteemed guest.
Yes.
Company is great. I love this.
Right. But I am very, very stoked for us to do an entire life catch-up episode here because I feel like you have been up to so much and a lot has changed.
Yes.
So much that I almost don't even know where to start outside of almost because I was thinking about this earlier today. I was like, okay, like where do I pick us up at? And we were talking about this like as we were kind of getting things rolling here. Like, if I remember correctly, I don't know if you said by name, but I remember like in your first full-length episode that you had mentioned at that point in time you were about to be going or trying to venture into some sort of a career transition.
Yeah.
Which you have since very much done.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess to dive back in, because I would just ask you like, hey man, how you been, blah, blah, blah. But of course you can be like, oh, good, busy, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Well, we got to catch up the timelines here.
Okay. So when we first recorded, I believe I had just left Pursuit. I believe.
Okay.
Because I was doing a lot of stuff with, at the time it was 2 Cent Sports and telling some stories and kind of making my way into, I don't want to say content creation, but more so just integrated marketing type of thing, like how we figure out to tell stories of different brands alongside brand A and brand B and brand Z. Like how are you making a story come to life? At that time, I knew I wanted to kind of stay in that world and just tell stories wherever it took me, and then it ended up taking me into professional sports. So this will be my 5th season. Make sure, 21. Yeah, this will be my 5th season in 2025, working for the Columbus Crew and Major League Soccer. Even that role has shifted and changed in so many times. I've gone from predominantly like managing our supporter relationship with our like hardcore fans in the front office, but now I've been able to have a little bit more autonomy, and which will shift a little bit more in this year. But for the bulk of it, I would say that like fan culture and development was what my area was, and the fancy way of saying like if a fan touches it, my team pretty much helped out with it. So if it was match day experience, a little bit of grassroots at the time, merch and retail, supporters still, diverse community outreach, and I feel like I'm missing something else. There's there's something else that I'm missing, but there was a lot going on in there.
Yeah,
and then going into 2025, we will kind of shift a little bit. We'll be a little bit more grassroots intentional because we've really never had like a big emphasis on it in the last couple of years. So we're going to make that a big focus for my team. Supporters will still be a big thing. Hopefully I'll collaborate on a couple of cool merch things because I do love fashion at the end of the day and love doing those types of collaboration pieces. But that's what life is right now. It keeps me very busy. I think at this point I would have like a very interesting view of soccer, sports, fandom in general, and how we interact in our daily lives. But it's been neat. It's opened a lot of doors. It's taken me on a lot of adventures, and it's brought me back to you here. So
yes,
there we go.
Now, I remember in the first episode, which I feel like I'm going to reference so much throughout this conversation, I feel like we talked a decent bit about like your interest in soccer and stuff in that episode, right?
I feel like we did. We really didn't do ourselves a favor and not listen
we
to
should
it.
have listened back and be like, what do we actually talk about here?
We should
So I'm
have.
just going off of vague memories that honestly I probably could have pieced together any of our like coffee hangouts.
Most likely. I feel like this is like an actual, we're putting together all of our phone calls, and we'll be like, on the podcast, we talked about like animation or something.
Yeah, it was something complete. You're like, you're telling me you want to work for Disney or something back on that episode. I'm
Yeah.
like, man, you mentioned the crew. I'm pretty sure you mentioned the crew.
I'm like, no, I said I wanted to be an actual animator, and look at me failing at what I wanted to do.
Nothing more than that itself is what you wanted to do. But I do love that, like, again, from my memory, I do feel like that's a lot of what we talked about, where some of those seeds of your next moves at that point in time were being planted in that original conversation. And that's kind of what I want to dive into at first is like, you know, again, I feel like a lot of people in the soccer world, especially like crew fandom, they know who you are now, right? They are very familiar with you, the work you do with them, alongside them, for them, whatever it may be. But I want to trace things back a little bit and connect some of those dots.
Okay.
And literally just picking up where we hopefully left off years ago is like, what was that transition like, leaving something like Pursuit and still knowing that you wanted to live in the marketing and storytelling, you know, brand adjacent worlds? Like, was it venturing out kind of onto your own, and then that led the 2 cents?
Yeah.
Or
Realistically, that was a time change. I think that if I could go back, I would do it differently.
okay,
I ended up leaving Pursuit, just kind of wanting to have a little more scope to my work. If I'm being honest, I felt like I had kind of outgrown what I was currently doing there. It was still a little bit hybrid, more customer service based stuff. I definitely had my hands in the marketing piece a lot, but there was just the area for growth just wasn't going to be there. And that happens sometimes when you're building a small business from the ground up. Had a wonderful time. I mean, I have nothing negative to say about my time there. But at the same time, like, I need to start doing different things. And 2 Cents kind of came in the back end of it, where I was able to start doing some of those creative pieces. Looking back on it again, would I have left without something lined up? Wouldn't done that. A little ridiculous to do that, especially during the pandemic. And then also, at the time, my partner was like kind of holding it down, and I think there was just unneeded stress that brought. Now at the same time, you can look back and be like, okay, if you hadn't did those things, would be where you're at, right? No one will know, but I can definitely say I think I wish I had moved with more grace, and moved a little bit more intentionally, just to give myself the grounding that I needed, but also to bring peace to the people around me. But this is where we're at. So I take accountability of, you know, every move that I made to get here, but you know, you just wish you did it differently.
Right. That hindsight is always 20/20.
Always.
But again, just like you just said, it's like, okay, well, we took that leap, might have been a little bit chaotic, but we still got to where we landed, and so it worked out in some way, even if the road was maybe a little bit more rocky than what we think it could be now. But I also would venture to guess that lesson that comes from something like that is now more tactile movements for those next sort of things like that, where you're like, okay, I'm going to make a leap into this, but you know, what did I remember from last time? Oh yeah, okay, what can my strategy be for this before I'm taking that leap? Strategize the leap a little bit. So I guess like during that time period, like you said, like we're obviously any sort of transition brings stress on you, on the people around you, support systems, whatever it may be. I guess where was your head at, if you can kind of remember, like Was it just like a, you know what, I'm going to bet on myself and we're going to make this happen? Or was it like a, I'm so sure of what I want to do that I'll know it when I uncover it? Like, I guess maybe what I'm trying to ask is like,
What was the motivation for it?
yeah, like, did you have like a clear goal of like, I want to take these next 2 or 3 steps for myself to get to this? Or was it that in a positive way, that blind leap of faith of, you know what, I know what I want, I'm not getting it right now, we got to go?
Yeah, it was more the uglier version of that last part.
Yeah.
If I'm just being, again, transparent, I wasn't happy that I hit the ceiling that quickly. And I felt stifled, and I want to do something different. I always felt that I hadn't found the platform to be able to tell my stories or celebrate others the way I like to, or even be creative in general. So it was really just I want to do something different. This is like kind of not working right now, and let's kind of jump. And I came from a family that like everyone kind of works the same job for a very long time. So I kind of felt chaotic internally, being like, well, now you're leaving stability and this, that, and the other. But at the end of the day, you got to be happy. You got to be enjoying the time spent, in those quote unquote 8 hours a day or plus that we're doing. And that wasn't there. So I thankfully had a lot of connections. I just had to figure out how to like plug the connections in to where I wanted to go. And there's a bunch of dumb luck involved. I mean, to be honest, the crew situation came out when they rebranded in 2021. Again, I was like freelancing with 2 cents, so I had a lot of time that I could just maneuver myself. The rebrand happens. The Nordica, which is the supporter group for the crew, reached out and was like, hey, who can come speak on the behalf of the fans? There would be like 6 or 7 of us at the time who could do 1 or 2 things. 1, show up in the middle of the day to a meeting with the front office, but 2, also be able to speak to the angst that the fans are feeling without letting too much emotion get in the middle of it. And, at that time, it was a story that we were covering with 2 cents. We were like, we kind of get the rebrand. Do we feel like the rebrand hit the fans at the time? Maybe not. But does it kind of point to where the team is going? Yes. So I was kind of the voice in the room that was saying like, hey guys, like I get it. This is why you did it. This is why the fans are upset. This is what tone they take from this change. And I think the way I carried some of the conversation allowed myself to be in a space where I was seen as, I guess, respected by the front office. And that's, I don't know, good or bad from the fans. Because the fans that just want you to go in there, fire, guns blazing.
Right.
But because of that, we left that meeting, and I was able to be more involved in the opening of the stadium. I got to be around a lot of the leaders in the front office, a lot of my leaders that I'd known just around the community. We're trying to make this a really big event for the city. And at the time, I told the front office that I would help them find somebody for the role I'm currently in. I was, at the time, was not interested in it. It was the scope was just different. I would have been the liaison only, and that would have just been the person that takes, hey, this is what the Nordic is doing. This is how we can kind of come alongside them. And knowing supporter politics, that would not have been a good fit for me, because at that point, supporters are not going to tell, quote unquote, front office is everything they're doing. I would have had limited things to work through. So I think about 2 or 3 months went by. They hadn't found a candidate, and they kind of asked would I come back and apply, and I said I would, but I would like to present something with a little bit more scope than the current role. I'm trying to make sure I can make this sound interesting, because I'm like, I've done this so many times at this point, talked about how I got here. I'm like, oh my God, I hope this isn't dumb. But
I mean, I've never heard it, so it's interesting to me. I mean, we've talked in bits and pieces and all that sort of stuff, but that was like, this story I've heard in different chapters as it's been happening. You know what I mean? We haven't sat and officially kind of rehashed it. And I'm sure there's somebody somewhere who's going to be watching this or listening to it who has not heard these chapters be put together either. So to me, and I would say for the viewers at home, I'm going to say it's interesting. Okay. We're good.
So kind of put together a deck, applied. Actually, the interview process was a little bit more rigorous than I anticipated. I think I interviewed with 10 people, and that included like who's now my direct report, the CMO, the CBO at the time, 2 members of ownership of the team as well, and who else did I interview with? Oh, community. So a couple people in the community space, and ended up being the candidate. and I accepted. I started, my first day was Hell is Real, which is the Columbus versus Cincinnati rivalry match. So 2021 Hell is Real match, that was my first day of work. Either that or my second day of work. And since then, it has been a fun ride. I can say that since then, I have probably completed soccer from a U.S. standpoint. We've won Campeones Cup, we've won MLS Cup, we've hosted the All-Star, we've hosted U.S. women's and men's games, so World Cup qualifying matches. I've helped open new stadiums across the U.S. I've helped mentor quite a few people across other teams. And I've been able to travel a ton. I think I've done every stadium in the East Coast except for one, and that's the new Miami one, which I'll wait because their new one is coming in a couple of years. And then over half of the Western Conference teams. So it's those small moments that kind of like brought me to the Crew has really opened up a ton of conversations, a ton of opportunity, a ton of projects that have fulfilled me. Mm-hmm. And honestly have helped me have a clearer view of where I want to go next. Because this isn't the end game, and some people may be hearing this for the first time, and they'll probably be like, "What?" But I think like the Crew is just a chapter, right? I think I'll always be soccer adjacent or around it, but I don't know if I'll be there until I'm 45. I think I'm always going to have opportunities come to me, and I'm going to always find opportunity as well. But I always tell people right now, my biggest thing is like, how am I sharpening my craft while I'm doing what I'm doing? So with the Crew this year, I'm really excited to dive deep into grassroots, build out that strategy, and also implement it in real time. We've got a lot of unique opportunities. One is our match in Cleveland in April, which is unique. We've not really played a game out of market. So that's a completely different way of like telling stories. Like you're almost introducing yourself to a new market that's not going to be a home market, right? You're not moving there. You're just showing up. It is a real game. It's not an exhibition or a friendly. So how do you bring the same hype, the same oomph and punch to a new city, a new venue? It's going to be very interesting. And I think from a sports professional side of things, it's exciting. Fans will definitely have different opinions on, if it's a cool move, it's a move they don't like. I've heard it all. But I think from the end of the day, it's a really unique opportunity. And I'm saying this, no one's paying me to say this. I'm just saying, like, it's unique. It's not something you get to do all the time. I worked around the match in Kansas City earlier last year where they did a similar thing. Kansas City moved their bigger match from their normal home stadium into the stadium where the Chiefs play. Now, it's not necessarily a like-for-like to our situation because they've just moved a couple miles across the city. We're going to be going to Cleveland from Columbus. But it was really neat to see the production of an MLS match be brought to a bigger stage, being able to use a lens of, instead of it being 20,000 of your hardcore people, you've got 70,000 people who are seeing your brand for the first time, people who are for the other team, obviously, people who are kind of aware of your team. Then you have your hardcores, and it's just a different feel. And I'm really excited to see like how we do that in Cleveland. Mm-hmm. So that's like right now my big focus is how are we telling that story? I'm going to be in the city quite a few times this year prior to that match, kind of building out different relationships through community, kind of helping bring the brand to life a little bit in pop-ups and grassroots movements. So we're going to hopefully have a really cool, as we get closer, really cool experience downtown that I'm really working on right now that I think people in Cleveland will appreciate, as well as Crew fans who make that trip. It's just going to be really neat.
So I also want to say, and I don't know if I've explained this to you before, but as, a friend who's watching you do all this stuff kind of from the outside, right? Yes, we catch up every once in a while, but like seeing the stuff as you share on social and updates and you're traveling here and doing this, like, again, it's like I'm not involved in the soccer world, but I'm involved in like the marketing, the branding world and all that sort of stuff. And it's been so interesting being on the outside of it, seeing your trajectory through all of this since joining the Crew, because it's been rad to see it in a sense that like it doesn't feel like you just like joined a brand, filled a position, are doing the jobs and duties of that position, and that's just sort of it. And you're like, well, at least I don't hate it. Like, it's been so cool from the outside of like, oh, like, and maybe I'm explaining it too strong, but this is all I can kind of think of right now, is like, I'm like, oh man, like Tyler is like helping build a culture around this brand and like building a true community or adding to the community or like whatever it is, which I'm sure is somewhere in your job description.
Yeah.
But again, just like seeing that from the outside, it almost like, not that I had an expectation of what your job would have been, hearing about it as your friend, but like it almost, in my perspective, has been almost an entire different world than what I would have assumed you entered when you were first telling me about it. Has it felt that way to you, or were you like, no, yeah, I knew this is what it was going to be, or like, yep, a completely different world, I had no idea?
No, it didn't feel like a different world. I think I was doing enough work with sports teams that it was very seamless. I think the biggest jump for me, there were two jumps. One was realizing how strong our fans have an opinion of our team and our club and our brand. I knew it would be pretty strong, but because at the time my primary function was like to listen to that, internalize it, look for themes and trends, and activate accordingly. We had such a split because we went from a team that was, I would say, very well ingested by the hardcore fans, right? But the casual Columbus sports aficionado did not rank us as a professional soccer team or even a product worth ingesting on their free time, because they're going to watch EPL, they're going to watch La Liga, they're going to watch Bundesliga if they're going to do soccer, because to them, the Columbus Crew are not Major League. So that was like really interesting to figure out, like, how do we bring those two groups together? Because they do exist. There's soccer fans in Columbus who do not go to Crew games, and there's actually a ton of them. So it was like, okay, as a brand, how do you restart the conversation? Which is honestly the biggest thing that the rebrand did. It restarts the conversation about the Columbus Crew. Mm-hmm. Yes, it may have been not rolled out the way that people thought it would be received, but it does start a conversation. It does now put you in a place where people are wondering, what is this? And then, thankfully, there was a lot of strategic moves around the product on the field that was able to appeal to the hardcore fans as well as the sports aficionado, because here in Columbus, we just like to win. If you go someplace and Columbus wins or Ohio wins, we're all happy. Right. So having a winning product on the field was crucial, because if there are small things that like marketing team isn't doing that people don't like, or if there's a community event that someone's like, this doesn't make any sense, doesn't hit for me, they at the end of the day can have match day where their team will go get the dub, and they have those memories that they're being built. And I think now, going back to your original statement about building a culture, for me, it's about how are we living that pride of, I'm a Crew fan, or I go to Columbus Crew games, or I love the event of a Crew match in Columbus, Ohio, doing something really cool in Columbus, and how do I take that and I spread the gospel, quote unquote, throughout my week? How does that go from you're the one friend who just has it on his phone, right, to where there's actual water cooler talk about it? Like, did you go to the Crew game last night? Did you miss that big moment type of thing? It's been building that, which has been really fun for me. And again, through the different initiatives that we have, like even like merch. We don't do a lot of merch moments, even though Columbus is a fashion-forward city. Being able to start to integrate the brand into that space has been really cool. Seeing us step intentionally into communities that are not necessarily soccer adjacent. One of my passions is working and telling stories within the African American community. People like to say that like that community drives drives culture around a lot of different pieces of life. And when it comes to sports, there's a certain like vibe or swagger that the community brings to, say, basketball. I think baseball is even starting to get it now. Hockey's slowly starting to be touched by it, but soccer is unique in America in the sense of like that passion and swagger is very apparent in other countries across the world, heralded by humans who are black and brown. But in the U.S., it's just not there yet. And we're getting to this really cool junction where U.S. soccer is going to be on the world stage in 2026 because the World Cup is coming to our shores. At that time, there's so many different like levers that will be pulled by companies, teams, nonprofits to align themselves with soccer that it will be unavoidable. So for me, like that big opportunity is how do you get that community to care about it? So it's been a lot of small, mini things of pulling figureheads into the sport, and not just in a cheesy way, bringing somebody on screen and having them kick a ball. How do you get real fandom out of these individuals who people look up to. I've had like a really cool experience in the last 3 years working with a couple of like influencers and celebrities who are bigger in the Black community, and seeing them fall in love with the game organically and then telling those stories is like opening such bigger doors. There's a guy that I'll say is a major influencer, mostly in one of the big 3 leagues, I'll say that, who actually deep down is a soccer fan. But his platform right now, because it's not built on soccer, no one knows that. So his whole thing is like, how can I finally go back to my passion? Like, legitimately, how can I bring that to life? And we've been kind of like working like, hey, we see your audience and we see who ingests it. They're ready for soccer. It's more so you need to start just kind of doing it. And obviously his team is brilliant. I mean, he's not where he's at because he's not making the right moves, but his team is just as excited as he is to go back to his roots. And I'm really excited to see what that looks like, because the trickle down is not just him being cool in it. It's the little kid who's 7 years old who turns on YouTube and watches that person's content, who now like sees people who look like him or her, and they're like, I can do this and be a part of the story. And that's what's really exciting. So that was my long-winded like piece of that's why I'm happy what I'm doing. Right. Because I get to do cool stuff like that. Like, honestly, like fandom in and of itself, it's polarizing. You're on one side or the other, right? There's drama and there's banter, and that's what's supposed to be. Mm-hmm. I get to just kind of take the themes and storylines out of all that drama and make it fun and appealing. And that's what I do.
So when speaking on fandoms, like I get like what has that been like to navigate? Because again, like you've said a couple times, like everybody's gonna have an opinion. You can't nail down everything perfectly for everybody. It's the classic case of like you're never gonna make everybody happy. Yeah. Anything that we do, there's gonna be somebody somewhere who's like, that's the stupidest thing you could ever do. Like, for example, I shared a clip from this podcast a couple weeks ago, and it's a guest that I had on, and he's like talking about how it's actually sometimes easier for people to take the low route and be angry and be mean to people. And it's harder work to be the bigger person and to own up and to be nice and all this sort of stuff. And like, there's like a couple people in the comments who are like, wow, this guy's saying it's hard to be nice. You must just be an asshole. And I'm like, man, like you completely missed the point. And I say that example to say that like, there's always going to be something wrong with something that someone finds. I would venture to say that I personally have kind of formed the belief that I do think that a lot of the times a lot of people like to find something to be mad at, even through a thing that they like. Yeah. For you being this like bridge between the fans, the community, and the brand, the just the crew itself, whatever you want to call it, what has that been like? Even maybe in like an eye-opening way or something. Like, how do you navigate that when, you know, if there's and obviously you don't have to share like the details if you don't want, but like, you know, when you're heading up a decision for something for some cool community thing, and then you got like 97 comments of people being like, whoever thought of this is a fucking idiot. Like, you know, like, we deal with it. You know, are you just like, hey, it's cool, whatever? Are you like, damn, y'all?
You learn to have very thick skin, because one of the things that I think you get this as well, our work is public. Like, when you've created a really cool video for a band, right? The people who are ingesting it are not just the stakeholders internally, it's the public. So you have to be used to someone not liking it. And then I sit in the space of, which this is what keeps my peace, right? Not everything is for everybody. It's just what it is. Now, yes, if I'm making a crew fan product thing, I would like the majority of my fans to like it, right? But I know I'm not going to appease every single fan, because at this point in the club's culture, we have so many different types of fans now. It's not just the same. It used to be, you go to a crew game, that Nordica corner was pretty much most of the fans' mindsets, habits, all that things. Like, you could make something that they like, most people in that building were going to like it. At this point now, you can go to a match at lower.com field and have up to like 8 to 10 different ways to experience the match. And that just wasn't what it was. So when I say that there's comfort in understanding not everybody is going to like everything we do, you kind of live in that space. For me, though, personally, managing the relationship with the supporters who are your most outspoken, it's about making sure that I'm able to listen and understand. And then one of the things we've been kind of working through as a group the last few years is how do we also disagree respectfully? Like, how can we get to that point? Because there's going to be times where one party does something or wants something that the other party doesn't. It's just life at this point. So how do we get over that bridge together? Because at the end of the day, they actually have a lot more access than a lot of teams. They have a lot more access than a lot of just clubs even in the league. They have like standing meetings with myself and other meetings of leadership where, yes, you may come in very passionately with, I don't like this or I don't want this. And I'm like, well, you're still going to get something of this, right? But at the end of the day, like, let's tell why we're doing this or why we want to make this. I think that's the big difference. So now decisions aren't necessarily in a vacuum when it comes to fans. And they also bring really cool ideas that we've activated. I think this current board and even fan groups has seen things that they thought of come to life. And I think makes them feel involved, and they are, because that's exactly why we're doing this together. But there are things that they don't like, i.e. like, I mean, the rebrand in itself, yes, they didn't like. But I'm like, now they're seeing like where the crew's name is in places that it wasn't before, just because of that shift. It's kind of funny. You know this from a marketing standpoint. I talk about how the logo shows up differently. The older one, I do love the old logo. I actually like all three logos. I'm just going to go on record. I like all three logos. But in the digital space where our world is now, the other ones didn't shine as much. Now, they shined in merch. They may have shined like on field. But in the online space, it didn't shine as well. And you got to see that come to life a little bit more. It's a little bit more, I would say, cutting edge. It's a little more striking. The new building is indicative of that. The ethos and like brand language matches up to that now. It just very different. This is going to sound silly. It comes off almost cooler in a way. And I will say younger. It feels fresh. It feels very fresh. And I think for people like yourself, even when it first came out, I remember when, because you're like, they changed the logo, but then you saw it with the building, with the new thing. You're like, this feels like a new product, and it feels cool and engaging.
Right.
And that's like what I had to lean in to that. Now, do we have fans who are like, oh my God, Tyler's a sellout, and he's this like corporate shill now? Yeah, they say it all the time.
Really?
They do it all the time.
I love that. That's also, see, even to my earlier point of like, oh man, like from the outside, I see you like being engulfed in this, culture so much around the crew and all this sort of stuff that you got people be like, yeah, Tyler's a sellout. Dude. I honestly kind of think that you've made it to a certain degree of whatever you're doing if people are angry at you.
Yes.
And being like by name, be like, yeah, corporate shill. They're like,
God.
yeah, that's actually pretty cool that you think that. Like,
I don't know. At this point, like, I always tell people I'm going to listen to your opinion. I'm going to respect your opinion even if I don't agree with it. But that's the beauty of being able to sit down and have a conversation with someone. And now I'll stand on quote unquote business if you attack me personally. And just like, okay, like I think recently, the fan wasn't necessarily attacking me, but he was making the point that no one thinks that I am genuine around my either love for the sport or this and the other. And I was like, well, I get that's your opinion, and I get that's your point of view. I need you to understand that the parts of sports you ingest are very different than what I have to work in. I have different rules and red tape that I have to bring things to life through, right? It's not as easy as you may think to do that. And sometimes I have to like shave a little bit of something to get the full product there, and that's just what it is. But my fandom of itself, I still love this city, I love this team. Not trying to like mess it up. I'm not in here being like, how can I make the Columbus Crew not be cool?
No, of course.
But at the end of the day, it's just very different. And sometimes the end goal is just a little different than your end goal might be.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. That is the beauty of you having your own opinion. For me, as long as you can articulate it with respect, I'm okay with it. And sometimes I don't like what I hear. It's just what it is. Like, you may sometimes may take a criticism and be like, yep, didn't like that one. I'm just going to throw it out. I do a good job of like knowing when to really dial in, even if it's something I don't want to hear, because I do get a lot of the personal Tyler is this, and I think that just comes from just being maybe I was really accessible in the beginning intentionally, but I had to draw boundaries. I remember I can talk about this as a personal thing. Earlier this year, I had a family member pass away, and typically I will let the people who need to know outside of my front office, like, hey, I'm going to go dark or whatever. And I forget what had happened. Something happened that people got mad about, and they were blowing up my phone while I'm in the funeral. And I was like so frustrated. And I was like, I shouldn't have to do this right now. And then someone had the audacity to call me. And because I like had my phone like turned off or whatever, but I got it, and the person's like upset on the voicemail. So I take a moment to call, I think one of the leaders. I either call the leader or the person themselves. I'm like, today I'm going to be honest. There's things bigger than this. That's just what it is. I'm right now at my grandfather's funeral. I'll come back to this, but I do not want to talk about the crew today, tomorrow, and the next.
Yeah.
And that's just, you're going to have to deal with that.
Yep.
That's just so I had to set those boundaries because people were like, we're just gonna call them whenever. Had to do that. I had to change it and be like, hey, after 6 p.m., I'm not answering phone calls, DMs. I see them if I see them. Mm-hmm. I don't stress out about like trying to like make sure that is at all times brought to life. And I know it kind of sounds, I don't want to say mean, but at the same time, like, dude, like you gotta put these boundaries up because I gotta be a human at the end of all this. I can't be like 365.
I don't think that sounds mean at all. And this is even, sparking some thoughts for me how do you, and we can obviously, yes, the crew and that funnel that it gives people access to you through, right? Mm-hmm. Obviously, it's pretty direct. We can use that as the example. But also just in general, how do you like still keep yourself able to lead with empathy? Lead with the like, you know what, I'll hear your opinion. I might not agree with it, but how do I, not let this get to me? How do I not actually get angry that this really, quite frankly, maybe this person says something really fucking stupid. And you know what? I'm not going to carry it with me. Yeah. I might be pissed for 5 minutes, but I'm just going to also let that go. I asked that because, like, I don't know what it is, but, like, I'll be completely honest with you. This last year has, like, tested my limits.
Yes, same.
So much with people. In the sense of just, like, truly not respecting, like, communication, not respecting the process of respect at all. Or just like being willing to learn and understand why something is the way that it is, right? And I know that we can't make everybody perfectly understand what's in our brains, right? We can't expect everyone to sit and you can't, fully expect a fan to educate themselves on, well, what exactly is Tyler going through to make this thing that I don't like? They're just like, I see it, I don't like it, here's my opinion. And again, that's very specific, but like, for me, it's like I'm not working in that world. I'm working in, different marketing and branding and all that sort of stuff. But like, I don't know what's in the water, but like the last year has tested my limits so much on, I love to be somebody that leads with empathy, somebody that does care often too much about the people that are around me or the person I'm working with or the duty at hand for the job that we're trying to do or create for, right? I care too much, and maybe that's a part of it. But like, that balance, I've gotten a handle on that balance, but man, there's a lot more things now where I'm like, I'm noticing myself, like, I don't take action out of it, but I'm like, why the fuck is that? You think that? Like, did you think before you sent me that text? Like, and I've been doing that way more often than I ever have before.
I think how I keep empathy at the beginning is two things. And I say this is a positive for both you and I. I think it is something that we naturally lean towards first. I think, we have to actively still choose to do it, but we do lead with that first. And as much as I'm hearing many different opinions and different worldviews and different critiques, at the end of the day, the positive for me is I'm having a healthy dialogue with people about something they love, that they care about. And for me, I think it's really cool when you can have something that takes you out of your life, your 9 to 5, and have something you can celebrate and build community with other people. There's a beauty there. And all these people at the end of the day want is for their community to feel good. That's what it is. So typically, again, yes, there's been some pointed things at me. Most of the time it's not direct. It's just they feel like their community, it may be feeling disregarded or pushed aside or not heard. I'm able to say like, hey, there's still always an outlet to be able to be heard. Let's have the conversation. And that allows me to most of the time navigate the conversations with empathy. Like I've had to do what I call like an intentional no. Like I hear you, this is just isn't what's happening. Mm-hmm. It just isn't. And I may know the reasons why. Some of them I can disclose. And sometimes, NDAs are a thing. I have projects that like, I can't do this or talk about this because this is how this world's set up. Like if you're going to talk to the individual one, you can't enter into agreement without it being a thing where you can't talk about it publicly. Mm-hmm. So I just have to deal with that. For me, it's just making sure that I know that these people literally love the sport, love our club, and that's where it's coming from. It's not coming from a place of hate or spite. Yeah. 9.9 times out of 10.
Right, of course.
So
something that I'm also curious about is when we're kind of rewinding back a little bit to you getting involved with this work, we make that transition that we were talking about. We find out that we effectively kind of like, yes, they're hunting for this position, but you kind of almost effectively create your own position in a way. Like they just, hey, you're the guy for the job, come back in. Was there any part of taking that leap into that where you were like, whoa, this is some uncharted territory and this is nerve-wracking and insane? Or was it like, man, it feels like all the twists and turns I've been taking have been leading me to, like, this is very clearly supposed to be my next chapter?
Yeah, it became very clear once I had the opportunity to kind of present that expanded scope that I was supposed to be there. I think for me at that time, the transition that I had to deal with was honestly like, how do I take thoughts and opinions that are typically not heard in these rooms, which they need to be heard, right? But how do I make it make sense? I felt like an interpreter for a while, where I was taking like, I think like some of the more passionate fan bases across the U.S. So the Nordeca, say Bills Mafia, what do they call them in Green Bay? Are they like the Cheeseheads, or is that me insulting everybody?
I feel like that's something, maybe.
Whoever the
Cheesehead crew.
Yeah,
I don't know.
No, the Cheesehead like group, like all the fans. And I apologize to Packer fans if I'm saying this wrong, but like,
hey, I don't fire off in the comments. Let us know how mad you are.
But the more passionate fans, typically like you get to only hear those opinions via a survey, or if you somehow get in a conversation with a person, right? I'm actually now taking those things in real time and bringing them to leadership and working through it. I think it was a couple of weeks ago at a telefan that, like, as much as you might not think that people hear your stuff, like I take very detailed notes and I have to recap every week of these conversations. So leadership is very aware. It's just things move slower sometimes. You don't see necessarily immediate shifts, but you will see something change, and I think your voice mattered to get there. So that was the biggest part for me, learning how to interpret their fandom and bring it into the business world and kind of like expound on it. So, and I'm not the only one that does that. I think like you see it across like your season ticket member accounts, the account managers, your customer service people, they're doing the same thing. They're taking your concern or your moment or even your praise and articulating it to leadership in a way that allows them to make business decisions off of it. So that was my biggest adjustment. Because before that, I was just telling stories. I'm like, this guy kicked the ball good. We're going to show him how good the ball is kicked, and that's what it is.
Yeah.
So.
No, through, again, navigating that transition, growth in that position, like, how are you balancing it all personally? Like, do you feel like you were able just to, like, dive into this new position, this new world, and it feels, I would guess, more fulfilling than maybe anything you've done before? It's in a world of something that you are a fan of, that you love. Were you just able to, like, or maybe not even able, maybe you didn't mean to and you just kind of went full business mode? Like, what was the personal balance like for you navigating all that? Because you enter an exciting world, you enter something new where you've got some leadership capabilities and all this sort of stuff. You're getting to, I would venture to guess, maybe sprout the wings a little bit more, you know what I mean? Like, kind of find those things. Like, were you just like, hell yeah, let's go? Or was it like a constant, like, whoa, I need to check in and like slow down, or like, what am I doing? Like, I don't even chill on the couch anymore.
Yeah.
You know, the classic, like, almost a burnout question maybe is what I'm.
Well, let's take two approaches to it. Let's talk how I've navigated from the career side of things and also the personal side. So personally, as an employee, I think the biggest thing was gaining the trust of my colleagues. Not saying that people were just distrustful, but it was like I had to prove that, like, I wasn't just a super fan that has like one or three big ideas and whatever. Like, I had to be like, I understand the business, I understand the space, I understand just the basic marketing principles, and I can bring them to life in different ways. That was the biggest thing. I wanted to like have myself as an individual be seen as a collaborator, one that people enjoy working with, can work with well. We had a couple of leadership changes, so I got to also learn from several different people. One of the most, I would say, influential was our CBO prior to the one now, KB. She's a woman in the industry who literally has done it all. And I learned a completely different style of like navigating, not just even sports world, but the business world because of her. the conversations that I have, the people she would sit me in front of. Like sometimes I'd be like, why am I here? But it was very intentional from her to like almost be like, I see potential in you. I want you to be a little uncomfortable. And navigating those 2 years of her, I honestly tell people at the end of the day, like, I know who I am in this world because of that woman. Like you can't push me around, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
She sharpened me in a way that I don't think anybody else can. And then my current report, absolutely love. It's funny because when I started, I was reporting to her, right? But I was new and fresh. I now feel seen as like a peer to her now instead of just like an employee, because she understands that I understand the space. And she looks to me for ideas and innovation and leadership as well. When I started, it was just me. Now I have a team of, when I'm fully staffed with like interns and my coordinator, I think I get up to about 12 or 14. And my entire way of approaching my job is different. She's seen that as well. Like I not only have to execute my like initiatives, right? I've got to also be able to articulate the vision to other employees of different levels, employees that may have a limited understanding of the business, right? If it's an intern or someone who's seasoned, how am I taking that vision and articulating so all of us can together bring forth this like fully fleshed out product? So as a person, that's been like really cool for me to like learn that now at this point I am seen as a leader in the space. Also, I intentionally started to work with other teams. I know some of my fans in the beginning were a little weird about it, but at the end of the day, we're all on the same team. We're working to bring soccer alive in the U.S., and I work with quite a few, especially in the East Coast, but I also lead a little like group of people who do what I do in the supporter space. So being able to just hear like what other different markets are doing, what other fan bases are doing. If it's a new fan base, like how are they ingesting MLS versus someone who's like DC and the New York teams like Red Bulls. They've been around since '96 like mine. So it's different mindsets kind of diving into that. As a professional, it's been cool to see how your friends are doing, your peers and colleagues are doing, living the same life with them, and hopefully kind of like stepping out and being a leader for them at the same time, I guess. That's kind of what's got me.
Yeah.
Personal side of things, Hanif Adurki asked me a question similar, like how are you personally like handling the shift from being a fan to like an employee? And honestly, for me, it's just wearing different glasses. I see the sport differently. I love the sport. I played it for quite a long time at a decent level. But when you go from being just a hardcore fan and just ingesting the sport and the public-facing marketing, when you're behind the scenes, it's just a different lens to use. And the human being in me has to be able to like have separation. That's the biggest thing I've learned. Is like I've got to turn it off. Like right now, it's a very intentional downtime for me between last week and the beginning of the new year. I tell all the fans I'm doing this whole like, who's the crew? Like what? I don't know anything about this. I like turn it off. Like if we make a big signing, I'll comment on it afterwards, unless they intentionally bring me in to be like, hey, we need supporters to be there for a welcome, or we need to see like who can speak to this moment. I turn it off. I really don't do anything crew thing, because at the end of the day, that's my job. So most people are ingesting soccer as their getaway and their passion, which is cool, like on the weekends or evenings. That's what I've been doing all day and all year. I got to take a break and turn it off, and that's what's healthy. That's how I manage it personally. This year we worked a record amount of games, home and away. I think we had 53, 54 games. And keep in mind, a normal season is like 34. And then we up to 50. Our team was very successful. We made it to the final of 2 tournaments on top of our regular season. We had exhibitions and friendlies. We also, as a team, hosted All-Stars, so that's a whole nother different work stream. So at the end of the year, I had to just be like, I'm done with the crew for a little bit. I just got to turn it off, and that's helped me kind of be grounded. And throughout the year, I had to also be intentional to turn it off. I mean, I stepped into the dating world for the first time in a very, very long time. I can tell you that was one of the biggest things that was brought up was like how busy we are. I had to almost like sit back and look at like a lot of my colleagues were in a very similar space of singleness, because it doesn't line up with a lot. So I had to learn how to intentionally show up as my full self as a person that's working in sports, but also wants to find a meaningful relationship and amidst the absolute insanity of our schedules and the things we're dealing with. So yeah, it's about just taking time for yourself when you can and doing it no matter what.
Yeah.
That's really what you got to do.
Something that has become gigantic for me in the last few years is yes, get yourself some more. But something that's become like a huge importance in my life, and something that I talk about with anybody given the chance, is personal fulfillment. And you can probably also phrase it as like work-life balance and blah blah blah, phrases that get thrown around a lot. But for me, like, understanding who I was outside of the career things that I did was a gigantic unlock for me to find a more happier version of myself.
Yeah.
Now, whether that's taking better care of myself physically that then translates into mentally, or doing things to focus directly on the mental rebuild that a lot of us have to navigate through, losses, or just adulthood in general, of a constant chase of, I need a career, I need money, I got to pay bills, blah, blah, blah. And, when's the last time I did something for fun without feeling lazy? Like, the constant barrage of life that happens. How have you had to navigate, if you have? Like, what does personal fulfillment for you look like outside of the crew? Like, the question being, who's Tyler outside of the crew, right?
Well, before I dive fully into the outside the crew, there's a big component of my job that does bring me fulfillment to that personal side, because I tell people that I didn't join the crew to do it because it's sports and it's cool, whatever. I really love community. Like, when you and I became like really good friends, I would say I was just on the tail end of completing some of like the advocacy work that I was doing, and I liked seeing communities come together. I saw the opportunity with the crew to be able to do some of the cool community initiatives quicker. A lot of red tape is around like nonprofit work or community work. Sometimes initiatives take a long time to get going. Sports is a vehicle that allows you to kind of navigate that a lot quicker, because everyone wants to partner with a sports team. So I get to real time work in my city that I've grown up in and do cool things that bring people together. That brings a lot of personal fulfillment. Outside of work though, dude, to be honest, this year I did not do a great job of being Tyler Phillips, the person.
Okay.
Now, I'm not saying I was out here doing dumb things. I'm
Of
saying
course.
I didn't like get to do a lot of things for me. That I'm trying to correct in 2025. I felt like for a long time I would go to work, go to sleep, go to work. I would see people on the weekends at the matches and not much else. I didn't get to see my friends more often. And I'm not complaining. I understand this is the industry I chose.
But just things you've identified because of that.
Yeah. I did not get to hang out with people. Again, like I said, started dating. That was a wild adventure in the beginning. But what really was the thing that made me say, like, hey, I've got to do more for me, was the birth of my niece. My brother and sister-in-law had a little girl, and me realizing that I was missing a lot of her being small, like, kind of started to like mess with me. So I was like, dude, you've got to take time. You've got to just take a weekend off or an extra day and be around friends and family. I think this year I probably saw my parents, who live in the same city as me, maybe under 20 times, and my grandparents the same way. And then that little girl, at one point I kept seeing her during like her big moments, but I wasn't seeing the in between. So like at one point I went from she was not crawling to walking. I really never even saw her crawl. I saw her go from a potato to now a walking potato. And like I was like, I gotta start carving time out, because if I don't, like, what is life? She's only gonna get older. I want to be able to be present, and that's gonna apply to other parts of my life. Like, if I want to be a good boyfriend, I've got to be able to take time out. If I want to be a good brother or sister, or I can only be a good brother. I have to be able to take time out. Even to be a son or a friend, I have to take time. And I think I have a girlfriend now that's been helping me realize that I can turn off my work and be present. I know that sounds so cheesy, people saying, like, can you do that? But you kind of just have to choose to do it, because if not, something will choose to do it for you.
Well, that's even literally why I asked that question, because it is so easy to, when you make a career out of something that you enjoy. I asked that question because I've lived it also, right? And I'm always fascinated in knowing how other people do that whole quote unquote balance that everybody mentions all the time. It is cliche, it is overstated, but it's a question I think is always worth asking, because again, it's like I've been in that same position. When you build a career, or you turn your hobbies into careers, right, over and over, yeah, you're getting a lot of fulfillment out of this thing. You're getting a lot of joy out of, wow, I pursued this thing that I had a dream or a goal of pursuing. I got it now, and of course, new level brings a bunch of new difficulties and challenges. Yeah. But then you kind of settle into that, and I always feel like there is a phase that even when you get the thing that you really enjoy and you're happy about getting, there's always going to be something at the end of that next chapter that makes you have to adapt and evolve in some way. Yeah. Where that thing that you got becomes a slightly different version of something that you don't exactly want anymore. Mm-hmm. And not that you don't want to be in that world, not that you don't want to do that job or whatever. It still brings you joy, but that joy has now taken a different form. And what effectively that new form does is open up other gaps and other spaces that I feel like we then need to fill with new forms of joy, new forms of fulfillment. Does any of that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. I think one of the things that we don't talk enough about, to be honest, is evolution. And I mean that of like, we aren't who we are today and the next day and the day. We literally are every day different versions of ourselves. And it may not be a overhaul, right? But it's a change, because hopefully if you've done your day right, you've learned something from the day before, and you probably make a decision the next day based off of what you learned, right? So from a full-on evolution standpoint, like me as a marketing person sees the ever-changing landscape in real time, and maybe a little more accelerated than some people do because we're working in it. Like same with yourself. Like you've got to learn, like, does this content hit on this medium the same way it did in 2021, right? Yeah. It may not, right? I still remember one of my mentors, I used to tease him a little bit because he was really obsessed with going viral. And I was even telling him, like, dude, that's not what this world's about anymore. Like it was in 2010, 2011, even before that. But we're not built for things going viral anymore. We're more about like, how hot is the flash that happens right here and now? Like how many people saw it right then and there? How long do people talk about it? But not like becoming this sensation. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you think about it in a sense, like I think about how meme culture has changed completely, where in and of itself, a meme is just a joke, right? Mm-hmm. A joke in visual form. That wasn't a thing in 2009. Yeah. We didn't really do memes at all. So it's like evolution in and of itself, like we, as much as humans say they hate change, we are every day engaging and embracing change no matter what. So I think for me, it's learning to see the nuances in that and slow down, and kind of the joy is figuring out the why something changed, or how, say, a piece of art one looks better in this light and looks completely different in this light. It's, for me, it's enjoying that, and that's kind of like how I've navigated evolution and change, if that makes any sense.
It does. And do you think that, not do you think, but do you feel for you, like, has it been hard to slow down to catch those nuances? Has it been hard to, like, just be able, I mean, it's the cliche, like, stop and smell the roses sort of thing, right? Like, that's a big thing that I've also tried to focus on in these last few years. I'm not perfect at it. Yeah. I am a person that's relatively go relatively often, but I really do like to focus again on those joy and fulfillment factors of, is something good happening right now, right? Yeah. Like, we're going to get to that thing. I'm still building towards those goals that I'm chasing every day. But also, I don't have to do that at 100 miles an hour, right? I can slowly chip away at things, but also enjoy the now.
Yeah, I think how I personally started to dive a little more into the quote-unquote smell the roses, I'm a really big Anthony Bourdain fan. And I think my reason for it is probably different than most, because people are like, oh, we love the food, the travel. What I honestly like was that he was a normal human being who honestly kept the essence and core of who he was, even through the ups and downs and fame. He just was showing up, but also at the same time being like, we only have one life, let's just live it fully. So I think it was a quote, and I'm not sure at this point the internet's just distorted it so much, but it was the one where he's like, don't just drink at your hotel bar, ask the people who work there where they drink, type of thing, right?
Yeah.
And what he's asking you to do is to go deeper into your moment. That's all he's asking you to do. He's not trying to be like, oh, they'll show you where the trendy places are. He's saying you're here in a space that's maybe different than your own. He's saying go deeper. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what's kind of been like my smell the rose moment. It doesn't matter where I'm at, if I'm in St. Louis, if I'm in Miami or New York, it's how do I take in, like, not just I'm in the city for a weekend. how am I being here this weekend? What am I enjoying and what am I get to see? And I think like we're not owed the next day, so I want to do as much as I possibly can. And I even do that here at home. You know, I live in Columbus still, and yeah, I could just do the basic Columbus things, right? But I have so much more love for this city because of the times where I can think of the slow walk I've taken in Goodale Park on a Wednesday, right? Or especially when like All-Star was here. All-Star was really neat for me to show off the city to my friends and not just High Street and not just taking them to Dublin. It was like, guys, there's this really cute sandwich shop that I want you to go to, but I want you to go and sit on the sidewalk and listen to the people in their conversations as they're walking by. Like, I really just wanted to show people like what the city was, but also go deeper with them. So that's kind of where I get my smell the roses moment.
Kind of adjacent to that, if I were to ask you what you feel like your why is. You know, we've talked about community building cultures, connecting people. Of course, the work we do is an extension of that. Yeah. But if I were to ask you, what is the why behind Tyler Phillips at this moment in time? Do you have an answer?
Like the why I'm doing what I do, and not just work, obviously, but yes, like why.
Not in work, but if you're taking that deeper look into you, what do you feel like you're actively uncovering, actively maybe even still pursuing of what you want to do?
It's gonna be cliche. I'm gonna be so honest. My why right now is trying to figure out the why I'm here. Like, why this moment in time, why is my existence? I feel the time that's passed between, when you and I spoke last on the podcast and now, I was living a completely different life. I was still doing cool things, but I was like a homeowner. I was a husband, and life is just different then. So those things have changed now, and my whys had to shift because my whys are now only dictated to like me in the circle that I'm in. The characters change, but the stories still keep going. So my why is like, okay, who am I? And when I'm showing up in this, like, how am I being the best version of me that can hopefully spark joy in someone else's life, help someone else's story be told. I know that my why is not necessarily centered around me. I feel like it's around the actions that I alongside other people can do to build the greater good. That's my why. It's like I want to figure out how today can be the best version of Dave of the people for me and the people around me. And that's it. And that's, again, that sounds so cheesy, but I feel like a lot of us spend so much time being negative or putting down others when that same time and energy can be spent, uplifting someone, helping someone, even championing someone. I don't think my why is allowed to be self-centered. It just doesn't feel right anymore. When you're younger, you're trying to be the coolest version of yourself, I think. And now I just want to just be the best version of myself. Like, what does that look like? And trying to find that is my why.
Yeah.
And especially now, again, back to Denise, I want to be somebody one day that she looks up to, truly. Little kids, it's so different when you're like a cool teenager. You can kind of see little kids. But the way they look at you with like this wonderment, you're truly like their world at some point. And I hope that world is something that she can be proud of, let's say that she knows or that she talks to. Because, I've had versions of me that I'm not proud of, right? The version of me that I want to have now going forward is one that anyone, doesn't matter if they're the 87-year-old man across the street or my like little niece that one day is looking to me to be some sort of brightness in her life. I hope that it's just I show up as the best version of me.
So on that path of finding ourselves, building the next version of ourselves, finding out what that fulfillment is, what that why is, I'm going to ask a super open-ended question.
Okay.
But I'm asking it because I know we can have this conversation because we've always had this conversation for years. And that's one of the reasons I love talking to you. Is I always feel like you are always kind of stepping out and looking at the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Yes, we can get caught up on things in the moment and be kind of stuck there. But we've always been able to have like these forward-thinking conversations of like, oh, this dream and this goal and things I want to do and build. Now, I'm not asking you to spill the tea. So if there's anything that, you just want to tell me after we stop recording that you're like, hey, I'm actually working on this. This is pretty fun. That's fine. But like, what's next? What are dreams? What are goals? Like, do you make a bucket list? Like, what are things that are still left to not only experience or do, but also that you want to do and experience to build that future version of yourself, to bring yourself more fulfillment?
So it's funny you asked that question, because I think, again, 5 years ago, the answer would have been predominantly career-based. And today it's maybe one career thing and the rest of it's life stuff. So one is, from a career standpoint, this is our 30th anniversary, or I can't remember if we said 30th season or 30th anniversary. It's one of the two things for the crew. I remember I turned off the crew, so I can't think about it right now. But there's a lot of really cool storylines that we get to bring to life that we've never done before. Some are going to be really cool, acknowledging the history of the team, but also pushing us forward. So I think being a part of that in very unique ways is going to be really fun for me as a person, but also as a crew fan. I get to do things that like call back to like when I became a fan for the first time. I get to do cool things that will bring in new fans that will take over the next generation when we're done. I make the joke that I have like one more year of relevance because I'm getting older now. Because some of the fans don't even realize like that I'm in my 30s. They think I'm like maybe mid-20s or early 20s, which is weird. I don't look that way, but my spirit, I guess, is young.
Yeah.
But I'm getting older, and I've seen this club be different. So I'm really excited to see, like, to tell those stories. Personally, really looking forward to diving into my current relationship in a way that I've not done in the past. I think I've learned a lot in the last 6 years or so. How to properly show up for someone, how to properly create space for someone to be themselves fully, but at the same time also be myself fully. I think one of the disservices that I did in my past relationship, that not only did I not create a space for them, but I also didn't create a space for myself. Like, I didn't hold it at all. I would just kind of hold things in, and I want to be able to intentionally be in this new relationship fully me, and hopefully I'm creating something for them that they can do the same thing. I do want to travel a little bit more. I was supposed to go overseas like a couple years back, in the pandemic and all that stuff. So I want to travel. I've been outside the U.S., but not across the ocean yet. So I want to do that. I'm really excited to see some of my niece Parker's first. Like, I can't wait to like go with her to her first soccer game, or see like even like her like first little group of friends. Like, I know she's my niece. My brother and sister-in-law get to see that more up close, but like I kind of live vicariously through them because I don't know if that's my journey yet. There was definitely a time where that was going to be my journey. I was really excited to be a dad one day. Deep down I still am excited to do that. I just don't know if it's going to happen. So I'm kind of like taking in some of those moments. And then third is going to be so silly. I'm excited to be a dog dad again. I'm going to get a dog. And in 2025 is the plan. As long as you know me, I've always had a dog or multiple dogs, and this is my first stretch where I haven't, and I'm realizing I need something to take care of in a sense. So I'm excited to like kind of dive into that, and I'll be doing it for the first time on my own. I've never done that. So I said a lot of silly things are what I'm excited to do. And then I also need to be more present with my family, and mainly my parents. I think them turning into grandparents made me realize like what season of life we're all in now. And my grandparents are getting older, and I realize my parents are getting close to that. And I like don't like how that sounds, but it tells me I have limited time with them. I really do. And for people that I spent most of my life with, being homeschooled, obviously, some of that time, I want to be able to do cool things with them. So I try to make myself remember to bring them along as much as I can. And I've been doing that, and I just want to do it in a bigger way. Like, I had them both come out for the All-Star game, and I treated them to that just so they could see it through my lens and also do a cool thing. Mm-hmm. I want more of those moments next year. So, again, cheesy stuff, mostly not work-related. I think if there was one last thing for me, because a lot of those things are still adjacent to other people, I'm going to start to lean into my quote-unquote superpowers a little bit more. I'm going to start to create more for myself, allow people to hire me to create for them. Some people don't know this, but it was really cool. With All-Star, I wasn't working quote-unquote for the crew. I was helping another media company and production company come in to tell the story visually. So I got to help produce the All-Star match. So a completely different work stream. Like it's not the marketing side. It was more so like the on-field experience and the show. And I got to actually like help build that out and help bring in Columbus themes into it. There's so many different versions of how that show is going to look that people won't know about, but it was like, it's neat to see the evolution of it and see that stuff. So that was fun for me to be like, okay, let's do more of those things. Let's do those on the side. Obviously the crew is going to be my number one, but I want to do more of those projects to just like branch out and test my limits and go from there.
Yeah.
So
now it can be crew related if you want it to be. It can be personal if you want it to be.
Who?
If I were to ask you, what's one thing you feel like maybe people don't know about Tyler Phillips? Do you have an answer?
So it's funny, I was talking to my girlfriend about this recently, that I feel like as of right now, there's a crew-driven narrative of who I am, because that's what people typically ingest me. I was on match day or around the crew. Mm-hmm. But what I've been told recently that my actual personality is so different than like the crew world, that I need to kind of like own that and show that off more. Like I remember I had a series of stories on my story on IG that people were like, we didn't realize you're silly, or like you have like a really fun like sense of humor, and it was like super silly. I think I had like, it was the video series was like me getting my hair done, drinking wine at the salon, me at, I think, Halloween in a Prince costume, and then me just like frolicking. And I think I've done this thing where most of my social media is work, so you don't get to see that. But I think to answer your question, people don't realize I'm actually pretty silly. I love all things comedy and humor. This past year for my birthday, I was supposed to have a roast. Like I really wanted that because
Wow. Okay.
My friends know me as like, I'm typically like the punching bag of the jokes, if that makes any sense. So like most people don't get that side of me, but I have provided so much fodder for my friends. It's kind of annoying. So I was like, let's just have a roast where all of you guys can come together and bring all this out. But I think for me, it's just that it's like, I'm a lot sillier than people think. I'm definitely serious. I come into a space with an air of like confidence, but I love shenanigans and love the frolic, and that can be in different ways, but I just love to be youthful and fun and all those things. That sounds so cheesy though. I just had to learn it was so different. Like I remember when I was starting to date, and the dates I would go on, people were saying that like there was just way more depth than they anticipated, and it wasn't just like we're gonna just do the silly grab a coffee, whatever. Like we would get into real conversations, the things I can make people laugh. I love to laugh with people. Like literally, right, I'm gonna say this quick sidebar. One of my favorite joys of life is share laughter. I don't know why we've like put it to the side a little bit, but like the last couple of years, a good share laugh is like my goal at this point. It's people coming together and releasing that like euphoria in a sense. So even on dates, like I think if they can laugh with someone, we're in a good place. We're in a very good place. So I think that's the thing that people don't get, that I'm subtly funny.
Yeah. Well, again, when so much of your identity does get attached to the work that you do, people are going to just kind of one-track mindset it of like, oh yeah, that's so-and-so, they do this, and that must be all that they do and all they think about.
That, and that I read a lot more people think. That's the other thing. I found that people don't think that I read or know that I read. I know they know I can read, obviously. But
I don't know. I'm looking at the comments of a lot of your posts, and they're like, hey, did you learn how to read a book, buddy?
No, but I think I posted when breath becomes air, and I was talking about how like it like made me cry, type of thing. And someone was like, wait, you read like that? I was like, oh dude, I love to. I don't get a lot of time to, but I love to read and be in whatever space that author is bringing us to. That is a thing that I love.
What's one go-to book right now? If somebody's viewing this at home and they're like, well damn, I like books too. What's a go-to and why should I check it out? What do you got?
What is it? The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck.
Oh yeah.
I mean that's a lot of people's go-to. I do like the breath, when breath becomes air, that one, because it's the perspective of someone at the end of their life who's not an old person, like realizing how finite and that life is, and how our actions are very, what's the word I want to say? There's always a reaction to your actions, right? And then what's the trickle down from that? What's the impact that you're leaving? How are you treating others? That one still hits hard for me right now. My boss just gave me, I haven't read it yet, but I'm going to start this tomorrow. I think it's the Welcome to the 5 a.m. Club.
Okay.
Because she overheard that, like, I now wake up at 5 a.m. I used to never be a morning person, but I'm a morning person now. And it's like how to unlock that time that you have to yourself. So I'm going to dive into that.
I'm working on 9 a.m. person, so we're getting some hours.
I used to be, I hated early morning, but now, especially with my crew life, that is one of the few times where I get time to myself. I work out then, I can read a little bit then, I can cook, because my days are just so long. I don't get that. So those are my go-tos that I would recommend now.
Well, dude, before we start to wrap up, first off, is there anything you feel like we haven't touched on that you're like, hey, dude, we can't close this podcast down before we talk about this? Like, anything that comes to mind?
You know what? Let's do this. Just for the kids and the plot out there.
Yeah.
Dating is weird. Can we talk about that for 2 seconds?
We can talk about that.
The reason I say that, because I now know you're in a relationship as well, which is awesome, because I think the entire time I've known you, either you had somebody or you didn't, or I didn't know you had somebody. Were you single most of the time?
Pretty much.
Okay.
Most relationships I was in, there was one where I knew you that lasted a year.
Okay.
But otherwise, it was like a couple months worth of an attempt, and then it was just like, this isn't going to work. Yeah.
Well, first of all, to say that I'm happy for you, my friend. I see the glow on you in person, but also online. But I think the journeys that we take to get there are something else. I wasn't built for it. Let's put it that way. Was not built for dating in 2025. And I don't think that, like, I'm taking a pause. You can edit the pause out here. But in 2020, I saw this shift where people were like, we're all inside. We just want to, like, start to tell stories and get deeper with, like, individuals, right? Then we all became super comfortable with ourselves. Then we realized going forward, when we came back outside, right? Everybody was full on themselves. And you forget that dating, in the first couple of days, you're typically trying to just show off the best parts of yourself. It was real interesting watching people in real time just bring their full selves, which I think is a good thing. I think it's a good thing that people are now like, you fuck with me or you don't, right? I think within that, I started to realize that the last time I was dating, quote unquote, everyone around me had a very similar worldview, same experience, so I was very comfortable. I got to learn so many more this year. And I'm not saying I dated a lot. I honestly didn't even go that many dates, to be honest. But I got to, like, meet really cool people and get to see how they live life and how they view the world. And it, like, kind of forced me to understand how, like, I navigate the world and how you can do it alongside someone. The reason I say it's weird, though, is because, like, there's all these terms. Like, when I was trying to figure out the whole, like, am I talking, am I dating, am I not? Like, that was a really weird thing for me. Like, I didn't. There'd be times where if I went on 2 dates with somebody, then I guess I was talking to them. But then you could go on 2 dates with someone else, and then some people said that was cool, some people said it wasn't. And
my understanding of the term, I always thought talking was like you're going on a date, you're texting often, you're seeing, you're talking about whether you're going to end up dating, and then dating to me was official.
Yeah,
that was my understanding.
That's what I thought too.
And then over the last few years, like, people are like, oh yeah, they're dating so. I'm like, they're together, and like, well, no, they're hanging out. And I'm like, then that's not dating.
Yeah,
I think even the terms got confusing.
It got confusing. I think for me, the kind of going back to the empathy side of thing, like, I would feel bad. Like, this was one of my hardest parts with dating. I would feel bad if I went on a date with somebody and then, like, say I already had another date planned with somebody else later, because that's what I was told you do. I'm like, I'm just new. I'm just new out here. I don't know. So, but then what would happen is that person, date one, would ask you, like, are you dating anyone else? I'm like, well, no, I'm not dating. I'm single.
Right.
But, like,
yeah.
But now I know that
that's so funny.
That's not cool if I go on a date on Friday. I was going on Monday, and I'm trying to make sure that I'm being cordial and kind to everybody's feelings, but I didn't know how to navigate it. I honestly felt lost. I felt like embarrassingly so lost. Did not know how to navigate that. Thankfully, the person that I'm with now, who I am dating, am a boyfriend and girlfriend.
Hey, you guys moved out of the talking phase? That's so crazy.
I would say we were friends first. She teases me that, like, she was very intentional in the beginning, and I just, like, this is a person trying to be my homie.
Right.
But it was neat. I think we've slow burned it in a way, which I think helped me appreciate the dating part, like, of intentionally getting to know them without obviously having that title. But you also start to learn how to protect what you have and what you want.
Yeah.
In a different way than you did. Because I saw a quote back in, it's definitely an internet quote, so those quotes have been around forever, but it was like, dating is different now. Like when you were growing up, you may see like, back in the 1800s, you would see like 4 or 5 like dateable people, right? But now you have the entire world,
right.
And it's like people are always talking about the whole like, is grass green on the other side? Like I don't believe in that necessarily, but you do have to like protect yourself from either opinions or other people trying to get in. Back in the day, I used to be like, yeah, people don't really. How should I say this? People are only like talking just to you, right? Mm-hmm. And in this dating time, no, you're like one of a couple until you get chosen. You're one of a couple. That was weird to navigate. Like I was obviously like the side of the person that was just getting chosen if I was, because even my roommate at the time, she'd make fun of me. She was like, you never like date around. You just don't. I don't know why you don't. And I'm like, it just feels weird. I feel like I'm spreading my energy.
Yeah, similar.
To her. Yeah. But you would quickly learn when you're going on these dates that you are part of people's options. So for me, it just became like, okay, how do I show that I could potentially be the best option for you? Mm-hmm. And then hopefully you'll choose this option, and then we get to learn more about this option and go from there.
Man, for a little while, in all honesty, I felt undateable, and I almost, and it is going to sound super deep, and I mean, hey, at points in time it was pretty deep, but I almost felt unlovable at times. Not that I wasn't like deserving of love, or not that I wasn't good enough for somebody, but like it almost felt like what I was looking for just didn't exist, right? Yeah. Because I'm also the type of person like, listen, I'm super emotional. Yeah, I'm overly emotional.
No,
I'm super like feelings, and oh my God, I can't believe we're sharing this moment together right now, And so for me, like I would lead with so much intention going into dating somebody, so getting a girlfriend. Mm-hmm. For me, I was like, hey, let's see if we can make this forever. What do we think? Oh my God, like not like I want to marry you tomorrow, but like
you're here, you're laser focused.
I care, right? And what would continue to happen, and this is just people living their lives, totally fine. But like what would happen kind of over and over is like I would be like, oh my God, you're amazing. I care about you. And they're like, oh shit, that's what this is? Like, wait a minute. Like I gotta go. And it was this weird thing because like I felt like I've shared this on other podcasts and stuff. For a while, I felt like I had done so much hard work on becoming, we've talked about this a lot in this episode, the best version of me that there can be. Does not mean that I'm perfect, doesn't mean there's nowhere else for me to go, but I worked really hard on building self-confidence and owning some more self-love and finding joy and fulfillment in my life to where I could show up at that date and time as the best version of me for that moment, right? I felt confident and energized. And what sucked is it felt like nobody wanted that.
Dude, that like, felt that my whole entire soul.
That was the thing that I kept dealing with, where I was like, okay, like I got to date this girl or got to hang out with that girl, like whatever, cool. But there was that like internal longing for like, no, I want someone to like truly want me for me, not just because it's fun in the moment or we'll give it a shot. Like, and listen, I understand most relationships is we're going to give this a shot and hope it works out. Yeah. Some are far more like, this is for sure going to work out. Yeah. Others are like, I think it's going to, I hope, But like that was my reoccurring thing for a while. I was like, I would show up to these relationships and I was like so just ready to love and ready to be like, yes, let's like put our best foot forward. Let's make this work. Let's support each other. Yeah. And often what I kind of kept being met with was almost that having a negative effect. Dude. On the relationships, because the women that I was with, they would be like, hey, this is amazing, and I do need you to know that this is amazing, but in my honest feelings that I need to share with you right now, this is almost a version of amazing that I don't know how to handle, and I'm not ready for this right now.
I have had that, and I think the first time it happened, it made life make zero sense, because you quote unquote do the work to show up as a better person, especially for me coming from a marriage where I want to change some things that I wish I'd done differently. Like you feel like you did the work to become that person, right? And then now everyone's like, you're great, but
yes,
I'm not ready for one, or
which is fair.
Yeah, fair. Like again,
but it hurts.
Yeah, it does hurt. But I think what I learned was that in and of itself, that moment is also vulnerable for them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thankful for someone speaking their truth. I'd rather them speak their truth than to not.
Yeah.
But dude, I went through the same thing. I legitimately did not think I was dateable.
Mm-hmm.
I did not, to the point, I was probably actually deeper and probably worse. We could make this a whole episode. I did not think I was an option because either my schedule didn't work for people, or I was too much of a lover boy, or I was too much into like the dating. I would take it too seriously, I guess, and I wasn't able to just do the fun side of it. And I was like, I don't know. This is just who I am. So hopefully I'll find somebody that likes me for who I am. Like, dear God. But thankfully that it's worked out. And I think, as cliche as it sounds, you will find your person if you're open to it. Because I wasn't open. Like, ask my friends about my monk lifetimes. I was a monk, and to the point where they hated hearing that word, but I just didn't, because I was just like, I'm tired. At this point, I'd rather put my energy to just other things.
Yeah.
And if something happens, it happens. And now you realize, like, as you're like, right before you kind of like break open your shell, that you actually are more dateable than you think, if that makes sense. You just have to like own those pieces and put them out there and just be like, here we are. Here's what it is.
And it's just, also the tough understanding of like, oh, well, just because you think you're the best version for somebody, that doesn't mean that it is the fit that they need, or it is, because again, I would go into relationships being like, so ready to be like, oh my God, like I'll show up however you need me to show up. Hell yeah. Like, and obviously not changing myself, not wanting, her to change or anything like that, but just like, how can we make this super healthy and super rad and awesome? Yeah. And again, it's like, oh man, did I bring too much to this? Yeah, like, did I bring, I wasn't angry enough in conversations we had? Like, dang, like this is,
I think what you've done now is that you've learned that you're not too much. You're the right amount for the right person.
Yeah.
And it may take you a journey to find the right person. And that's what I think that's why I said earlier about the whole like making space for myself to be me fully. Mm-hmm. Like one of my favorite things right now is like, I like that my person really doesn't care crew stuff. So I get to showcase all of the other things that I'm passionate about. And that's enough. And again, that silly side she loves. The crew stuff she can honestly not care about. And I'm like, I love that because that allows me to like be myself fully.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, it was a journey and here we are. So yeah, I had to say that for the plot. Dating is weird. Push through, be yourself, and go from there. And we can talk more offline about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I will just kind of put a bow on it by being like, I 100% experienced that same thing. I mean, there was times where, I was sitting in my one-bedroom apartment by myself. And truly, I mean this. Like, I was sitting there and I felt like I mattered to nobody. Mm-hmm. I was wanted by nobody, needed by nobody. Now, of course, yes, we all have friends. We're all more cared about than what we think. But man, like when dating isn't going well and you're not getting that, instinctually what we're built to do, you know what I mean, is find a partner in some form, whatever. It's like whatever that deep-rooted thing that it's digging up, you're like, oh man, like, this is literally not working.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to show up as the best me and I'm trying to keep my life like fulfilled and joy-filled and all this sort of stuff. But then ultimately, it's like with my girlfriend, it was the most natural thing. It wasn't a like, wow, we're going to try and make this happen. Yeah. It was like we had been friends and then all of a sudden had one conversation that just changed the trajectory of everything. And it was like, oh, wait a second. Didn't really think about that. Okay. It was almost the classic, like, kind of you weren't looking for it sort of thing. And then it popped
And I actually think that probably happens 90% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yes, you can be intentional, be on the dating apps, go on the dates and stuff, but I think I feel like people are always surprised by the ones they end up finding. And I think if I was to quote unquote coach someone, and I am not the dating coach, so don't take this to the streets. But I think if I was to give advice to any young human being or any person that's like, older looking, just be yourself. Mm-hmm. You are enough for someone. And the second part to that is when you have that first moment where you think you're not enough, or say like you have that first fight where you both have differing opinions. There's a beauty to that because it just means you're both still showing up and standing up for yourselves. Work through that together. Just because you have a fight doesn't mean it's over. Just because you have an argument means it's over. You guys are not yes people. Like, you're not going to just be, oh my God, we love every single thing and the same thing. You have a whole another life that you've lived. You've had other experiences that dictate how you see things. Like, both people or multiple people. If you're in a poly relationship, I learned about this. People are like
right,
4 or 5 people deep, but like every single one of us is an individual that has had different experiences that shape the way we see things, and you're at some point going to have a moment where you don't see things the same way. That is not a bad thing. That is life. So always show up as you, because at the end of the day, that person gets to choose if that's the version that they want to do things with.
I love it. I love it.
There it is.
Hey, like and subscribe to our relationship podcast coming up real soon. I don't know what it's called yet, but it'll be out there.
We're going to call it the Love Doctors.
Love Doctors. Love Doctor 1, Love Doctor 2. There it is.
Totally legit certificates of whatever we're doing.
That's true.
It's
They're
great.
Right here. I'll Photoshop them later, and
It'll
if
be
I
great.
didn't, you didn't need to see them anyway. It doesn't
That's all
matter.
right. You're not for us. You know.
Couple last things. Something I've been doing on the show since 5 years ago when you were
Yes.
first on it is if the guest wants, giving you the chance to put me in the hot seat. I've been asking you questions this entire time. Is there anything? I mean, especially you and I are catching up
Yeah.
for the first time in a while. Put me in the hot seat. Anything you want to throw my way before we wrap things up here?
What's the point of your podcast? You got like 17 different ones.
This is true. This is very
and
true.
I don't mean that in the demeaning way. I'm just like, they're all so different. Like, and the thing is, podcasting isn't even your thing. So that's a lot of time and energy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why do you do them? And again, I'm actually just being curious.
Yeah. I love talking to people. I just love sitting and talking to people. And with this show in particular, it is just the best excuse to sit and talk to somebody rather unedited for 2 hours about their lives, about everything that they do. I've said it countless times. This podcast, at least, is a cheat code to make friends. Or to build stronger relationships.
Or to burn bridges.
Because
we out here. I'm out now.
I don't want to do this anymore.
No, you're good.
There's that connection piece. 2, I love entertaining. I truly do have fully owned, I think for a handful of years, and we were friends for these years. I feel like I was always kind of halfway in on whether I liked being in front of a camera, entertaining, owning up to just a confident version of myself that was I like being funny in front of things, or I like being, having cool, deep conversations and sharing it. That was a battle I had to go through for a while where I was trying to deny myself of that. I was trying to deny myself, no, you don't have anything worth anything to say. You just want, you don't want to be famous. That's all it is. You just want to be, have eyes on you, whatever. And so over those years of building that confidence and uncovering the true version of myself, I can say, listen, I'll just own up to, I like entertaining. I love hosting things. I love having conversations. I, love putting the podcast voice on a little bit and it's those are very fun things. And, that leads, directly into, starting up the comedy podcast that I have. It's I've always loved improv comedy, and I'm man, let me just take an interview like this and pretend that we made it up on the spot the entire time and make it real stupid. So I'm all right, cool. I'll have an improv comedy podcast. Why not, right? And it's just any endeavor that I've done and any of the ones that I'm working on right now, it's all in an effort of I just love storytelling. I love storytelling in any form. So this one can be deep dive, honest life conversations, where the improv one can be, your character on that could be that you're the CEO of a poop store and you sell turds to people. And we're going to build a whole episode about it. And it's both of those parts of me exist, right? I want to sit and talk about, the depression of heartbreak and feeling alone in my apartment to where, truthfully, I didn't want to exist for a while. And at the same time, I can sit same day and be check out this new improv comedy podcast where this person sells dildos. It's those are all parts of me.
Yeah.
And I love fulfilling those parts of me. And of course there's the creative element of, I just love creating in all these different ways. But, I would also say there's probably a logical answer too of very, very practically, the format of podcasting is such a doable format compared to, filmmaking endeavors that I'm doing and all that sort of stuff. It takes so much to accomplish.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I don't want to do them, or building a brand takes so much to accomplish. But podcasting, you just need a couple mics, and if you're really trying to get fancy with it, a couple cameras and some lights, and you're set.
There you go.
That's why everybody and their mom has a podcast nowadays. Not all of them last, but, you can have one. And it's just such a practical form that it's almost hard for me to tell myself no. When I have an idea and I'm it'd be fun to sit with these couple friends and have a conversation like this. I'd probably call the show this. ooh, I'm going to do the branding real quick because I also know graphic design. That's a pretty good logo. You know what? All I need to do is get these people together next week and we can record an episode.
Well, I may have to employ you to do my own. I mean, I feel like everyone has one, but I've always thought like I've got a lot of unique characters in my life. And there was a point, I think, where you were kind of helping me flesh one out.
Yeah, we were talking about that for a second.
I still think we should do it. I think I should do it.
My answer is always going to be yes, because, yes, I can't do everything for everybody, but I always want to be able to take this version of myself that now exists, that, yeah, there's some technical creative skills of what it means to create a podcast or whatever. But, like, more than anything, like, I just love helping people fulfill those creative goals or any goals in general, realistically. But the answer is always going to be yes. And that's why I'm like, yeah, everybody has a podcast. I've got 19 of them, but I'm probably never going to stop. And I kind of don't think anybody else should tell themselves no either, because, one, there's not even a guarantee that, just full honesty here, folks. You could start a podcast tomorrow. It doesn't mean you're going to be doing it a year from now. It's very easy to stop doing them. Yeah. So give it a shot.
I just want 10 episodes. That's it.
That's yes.
I can do 10.
I mean, that was there is now a statistic that states that most podcasts only last the first 7 episodes.
We're going for 10.
Because that's that honeymoon phase, right? It's exciting, then you realize it's work. That's why you were episode 10, right? I think of this original podcast.
Yeah.
That's why I recorded the first 10 of this show before I ever launched it. Because I was like, I'm going to break that statistic.
Yep.
I want to make sure I have 10, which is a handful of months based off my release schedule, so then I can keep up and maintain that. And now we're entering year 5 of me doing the show, and I've got it down to a system and a process where I don't really, unless there's outside circumstances, get behind on episodes, right? So it's like I get to keep myself fulfilled, but also from a productive standpoint, from a proactive standpoint, or even doing them physically, I'm always ahead. I know that based off my release schedule and the way that I record, I'm not sitting and I'm like, oh my God, it's Monday tomorrow. I'm supposed to release an episode. Hey, Tyler, can you record today? Because I need, it's like, no, like I'm usually always pretty much ahead. And I don't know how I got on that side tangent, but it does. It ultimately just comes down to like, I just love making stuff. I love entertaining. If somebody hit me up and was like, hey, I've got this show, this series that I need a host for. I need a host to be this Travel Channel type show. You want to do it? Absolutely. Like that, like those sort of things, like I'll add it to the list, because back to even the fulfillment thing that we've talked about a few times, I'm never going to tell myself no. If I can think of a logical and practical way that I can accomplish something and it doesn't majorly take away from something else that I care about or majorly have to change my life in an illogical way, I'm going to say yes. And I also think that there's value, you wanting to start a podcast. Maybe there's some uncertainties you could have about it, or anybody doing anything that's listening to this. Like there's uncertainties that we have about starting anything. Can I really keep up with it? Is it going to be easy enough? Is it going to be hard? Whatever. I subscribe so much to that just do it mentality of just try it. Just try it. There is so much value in just doing the thing, because it's going to do one of two things. And I've said this so many times on this show, but like the value in just trying something, it's either going to show you that it's pretty difficult, maybe it didn't work how you wanted it to work, and then you're either going to be like, how can I do it better? That was fun. I want to keep doing it. Or what do I need to do? What's my plan B to get there, right? Like, damn, that didn't work how I wanted it to work. What can I do to solve it? That shows you that you want it. Or if you try it, it doesn't really work the way that you thought you were going to, and it's okay to sit and tell yourself, you know what? I gave it a shot. It didn't feel how I thought it was going to feel. I don't have to do any more of it. You know what I mean? Like, we don't have to set some imaginary bar of if this doesn't become the next most popular, blah, blah, blah. It's like, if you do it, it doesn't hit like you thought it was going to, you're either going to figure out how to make it hit that way, or you're going to sit and be like, who cares? Yeah. I'll do something else. Exactly. Like, so that mentality, I think, is ultimately why I have all these different shows and all these different endeavors, is because I'm like, I don't want to deny myself anything that sounds fun, and if it sounds doable. So when somebody says, I've got an idea that I kind of want to do, yeah, I can't come in and do it all for you, but I'm absolutely going to be like, oh my God, please let's talk about the idea and let me help in what logical ways that I can help, because I always think there's so much value in just giving the thing a shot.
We're going to talk offline. I got some ideas.
Beautiful. Well, then in that case, we should get this thing wrapped up so we can talk ideas.
Okay.
I mean, we have touched so much on the fulfillment, on the joy, on the growth that, I mean, it's happened ultimately for both of us, and we can make this probably a 6-hour podcast if we were really taking all the deep dives. 2 final things. One, let's probably pretend, we're going to pretend that time travel is real.
Okay.
But since you've been on this show before, we're going to specify it to that. And I don't mean this in a, hey bro, don't do this, but more so in the just larger understanding of who you are, what you've learned. If you could go back to past Tyler that was on this podcast the first time, and you got to share something with him, again, and we're not back to the futuring it, we're not changing, altering something. Mm-hmm. You just get to go back, share something with him. What are you going back and what are you telling him?
I'll tell him 2 things. One, you're actually doing really well with your health. Continue that. I think as we get older, things shift and change, and I think we take for granted the health we're enjoying. So I think I would have told him to maintain that. Not saying I'm like unhealthy now, but I like can tell the difference of when I'm like not doing something versus when I am. And I was doing things, and I was living the athlete life. That makes any sense. I think I would have told him to give himself grace when he transitions to the non-athlete life. But also the other thing I would tell him, which I think is more important than that, was that continue to be yourself, right? But continue to take accountability for how you show up as yourself. At that time, again, like I think there were a lot of things that were not authentic to who I would like to show up as, and I need to take responsibility and accountability for how I moved in those days. I'll tell them to like grow from it, learn, and that you will be okay. And try to leave things as better than you left them. But in the instance that you don't leave them better than you found them, learn from that and try the next time again. Hopefully you can continue to put yourself in a place where you get to keep trying and give yourself the opportunity to be better than yesterday.
I want to add a second part to this question.
Okay.
Because I think
isn't there still a second question too?
There's still a second question.
Okay.
So this is part B to this first question. But I'm going to ask you because I do feel like you would maybe think about this, or you can be like, stupid fucking question.
Yeah.
We're going to keep playing pretend.
Okay.
Time travel still is real.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, if future Tyler showed up to you,
oh God,
and was sharing something with you, what are you hoping that he's telling you?
I hope that he says, dude, it's all right. You did good, kid. I know that sounds so weird, but I think like all of us want to, at the end of the day, like live a fulfilled life, right? A lot of our doubts are typically just internal. They're not necessarily external. They're not like, you're not necessarily held back by external forces than you think you are. You can actually do a lot of things that you just want to do. You just got to do them. So I hope that I will have chosen to do things that put me in the place I want to be. And they're like, hey, I dapped myself up. Not just a handshake. We're dapping up like, my boy, look at you. Look at you. You're not even there yet, but you did it. I think I hopefully would just say keep on the path. Or change. Or he's like, hey, change. Like, you need to do this like
Stop
today.
Now. Make Ross delete that podcast episode.
You will be. You never know. I just hope that he gives me the realness, keeps it real. No fluffing it. Keep it real. He's like, we're in shambles. We're 55.
Last question. For real.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you say something that really spawns something magical that I need to talk about.
Yeah.
Technically, I've already asked you this question once before.
Like,
because even
in general
after
or on the show today?
On the show, not today, but the last time you were on, because I have been ending every episode of this show with the exact same question since we originally did this back at the end of 2019.
Okay.
So now it's time to bring this question back around, and guess what? Good for both of us. I have no idea what you said the first time, so you might repeat it. You might bring some whole new knowledge nuggets to this. Okay. But the question is, if right now you knew that everybody everywhere was listening to you speak. They were listening to this episode. You've got a live mic attached to everybody everywhere. You get this one single moment to share one thing with everybody. What are you telling them, and what do you really want them to hear more than anything?
3 things. I'm pretty sure one of them might be a thing I said, but 3 things. 1, you matter. Your existence matters. What you do matters. And I would like you to own that. We may not know all the reasons why we're here. We may not know where we're going, but what you're doing matters to somebody or to something. Like it just does. People have eyes on us at all times, especially in this world. People know more about us sometimes than we think we know about ourselves. So in and of that, we matter. Obviously, you can take it deeper. Like your existence matters to, there's loved ones, this, that, and the other. But say like you're in a place where it's a little darker, right? Even in those moments, you still matter. And I think sometimes we don't hear that enough. Number 2, take care of yourself. Mentally, physically, emotionally, put the work in. Therapy's great. Absolutely love it. Work out, be active. And I'm not saying go do a triathlon or an Ironman or do CrossFit. I know you do CrossFit. Move. Just move your body, because the day you can't have movement, you are starting to slowly lose the essence of being a human being. And that's a sad reality for some people. But I tell people right now, I work out now not to look good. I work out because I like to be able to move and not hurt. And that to me is a gift. And then the third, again, continue to hold space for others, whether it's friends, colleagues, family, partners. You have to hold space for them so they can be free and safe to be themselves. That's a human existence thing. Everyone deserves that. So continue to hold space for others. Lean into empathy. Do that.
Dude, we just made our 2nd full-length podcast, and I am so excited that
Cheers.
we made it happen. It was 5 years in the making at this point.
Literally. Sure.
At this point, we have sat and you have talked about your life with me in this form for at least probably 4 hours or so.
Is it really?
Not in this moment, but between the first episode and the second episode. You're like, whoa, 4 hours, dude. What the hell? This is cool, but get me out of here.
Goodness gracious.
But, dude, I appreciate it, man. I am so stoked that you were down to come back on.
I appreciate you, man.
We did it, dude.
Dapping
We
you
did
up.
it. We did it. We made a podcast.